Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go and shift gears. So we're going to play a little bit of an audible right now. So Keyshawn and Sonora, I know you all are not necessarily the biggest college football fans.
Yeah,
We had
I'm
this
all.
discussion earlier today, and I know this, but I am. So with that being said, and obviously football is huge in Texas. We already know college football is huge. High school football is huge in Texas. And the Associated Press just released their preseason top 25 poll. And one of the big announcements with it is there were 5 different Texas teams to make it into the top 25. I had a chance to interview Chancellor Johnson, the sports journalist here in Houston. So let's go ahead and hear what he had to say about this announcement today. And Chancellor, we're talking about the AP preseason top 25 poll. Good news for Texas schools. There are 5 different Texas schools in the preseason poll. What are your thoughts and what's your take with it?
Yeah, a great start for the Lone Star teams, and you can consider that the top 2 Texas teams in Texas and Texas A&M as 2 teams that not only have playoff hopes but championship ones. Texas coming in at number 5, as you hear the airport behind me getting ready to take off, and a lot of the fans hope their teams take off this season as well. The Longhorns, you're talking about being led by Arch Manning, going into another year for him and the talent and the roster that Steve Sarkisian has built around that team. Then Texas A&M, a team that was right there on the playoff doorstep last year, falling short against UT and having their playoff hopes, exhausted. They're a team that hopes to get back to the playoffs as well. And then how about the Houston Cougars and Willie Fritz? They're a team that can actually win the Big 12 and potentially get into the playoffs. This is their highest. This is the first time they've been ranked in the top 25 since 2022, and so Willie Fritz has certainly built a nice roster here at U of H, and it will be really interesting to see what they can do in the Big 12 this season.
And and I think it's so interesting too is when you talk about the Cougs, like everybody, I think a lot of people always just put them in the category of it being a basketball school and not a football school. And I think that this year, this is the 3rd time since 1991 that they've actually been in the preseason poll. So, I mean, kind of going off of that and what you just said too, I mean, it looks like the tide is kind of shifting for the U of H as well.
Absolutely. It's a Willie Fritz effect. That guy has won every single program that he's been at. It's the reason why the UH hired him to see what he could do in the Big 12. And since then, look, last year they just had a 10-win season and capped off the year by beating LSU right here, in Houston at NRG Stadium. And that was a really big momentum builder. And on top of that, they were able to retain a lot of guys. And it starts with their quarterback and Connor Wigman. And, having him back for another year, he's one of the best quarterbacks, not only just in the Big 12, but in the country. And so, they retooled. They knew they had to get more size up front, starts in the trenches, especially in the Big 12. And so, they will have a real opportunity. It's not just, get to the Big 12, but potentially, get to the playoffs. And so, they'll have an early test against Texas Tech, another one of the Texas teams that certainly has playoff aspirations and all the money that they're pouring into that program. But, U of H has been known as a basketball school, but their fans are very prideful, and Willie Fritz is certainly building a very nice and respectable program here off on Color Street.
Now, I have to say this much. So I was really happy to see the poll because I'm a huge Ohio State fan. Mm-hmm. So I love to see them at the top. But I mean, it's not going to be an easy path forward when it comes to the Longhorns, when it comes to the Buckeyes, when it comes to the Cougs or Tech or all these other schools or even A&M. Were there any schools in the top 25 where it kind of surprised you or anything surprised you with the poll that came out?
Well, I want to start with your Buckeyes first, man. It's definitely not going to be easy being in the Big Ten, but they got 40 out of the 69 first place votes, and that shows you the respect they have up there in Columbus, Ohio. And so, as you mentioned, a very tough schedule, but they have one of the best rosters in football. You have Julian Sang at the quarterback position, the best athlete and best player in the country as well. In your wide receiver in Jeremiah Smith, what a monster that he is. And so, it's certainly, understandable why Ohio State got their due. I think a team that, maybe surprised is Indiana. They're the national championship. They're the national champions currently. And Kirk Cignetti, coming off the year they had, winning, turning that program around from literally worst to first. It's got a little bit higher at the moment, but as you mentioned, the Big Ten is such a gauntlet. I expect Indiana to be in the playoffs once again. And whenever you have a head coach like Kirk Cignetti, who has built the program the way he has, currently has clearly shown his ability to win and win at the highest level, I think the Hoosiers will be just fine.
And and it's funny you say that because, like I said, I'm a huge Ohio State fan, but I felt like that Indiana kind of got a little bit of a snub when it went into
Yeah.
the preseason poll, and it's so funny because growing up in the Columbus area and stuff, it's always Ohio State, Michigan, and sometimes Penn State. Like those are the three Big Ten schools that everybody's used to hearing, or hell, not to age myself, but even Nebraska in like the late
Yeah.
'90s and stuff like that. But it's like Indiana, like you never think about Indiana being a force to be reckoned with. So I honestly hope that they do make it to the playoffs. I hope that they do really well. And it's funny because I'm like, if there's one Big Ten team that's going to knock off Ohio State, I always hope it would be a school like Indiana or one of the schools where they don't really get their flowers very much and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As I mentioned earlier about how Signetti has turned that program around, because if you're old enough to remember when Nebraska was winning, then you're old enough to remember how bad that Indiana has been over the years. So what he's been able to do there in Bloomington is nothing short of really a miracle. And so that's why he carries himself with so much confidence, because the proof is in the pudding. But talking about the Big Ten and how difficult it is, Ohio State at 1. Number 2 is Oregon. Now they're not a team that has fallen underneath the radar, but they're still seeking to get to over the hump and get back to a national championship, I should say. And so, as I mentioned, before in years past, it's been the SEC, and where they've been the best conference, for the past few years. But lately, it has been the Big Ten, and as I mentioned earlier, it is really a gauntlet all season long. And for a team like Ohio State, before you even get to the conference games, you got to play Texas, a team that's in the top 5. And so, how lucky are we as fans to be able to get that type of matchup early in the season?
Oh, for sure. And and it's so funny that you mentioned Oregon. I still haven't shifted my thought process in the fact that Oregon is part of the Big Ten. Like it still feels so weird to me. I'm like I feel like that. I know the Pac-10 is obviously changed into whatever it is now, but it's always so weird to me to see them in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you dated yourself even more. You said Pac-10. I went to Arizona State when it was the Pac-12. So now it's funny now seeing how you got teams like Arizona State, Arizona. As mentioned, UCLA's in the Big Ten, Oregon's in the Big Ten. It just doesn't necessarily feel right, if I'm being honest. I'm used to the Pac-12 after dark, as how we used to call it when I was in college. Now I'm dating myself, but yeah, it is made for just even more competitive conferences with some of those teams going to the Big Ten, some of those teams going to the Big 12.
Absolutely. And the last question I have for you is I want to talk about SMU. They're also in the preseason top 25. What's your take with SMU? I think that's another school that kind of, from a football fan like myself, I don't think of them as being a really strong school like University of Houston. Like those are schools where I'm like, oh, I know that they're in a one of the power conferences, but are they actually worth a damn this year?
Yeah, it helps to have when you have a number of returners coming back, and so what Brett Lashley has been able to build going into the season, you can understand why they'd be able to get votes, and so they're one of 5 teams in Texas, in the top 25, and I think they're slated about right, and they will have an opportunity, just like a Houston, just like a Texas Tech, to potentially punch a ticket to the playoffs at the end of the season. They have a very good roster, and so I'm not surprised at all that they were able to be a top 20 team this season. At
Awesome.
least in the preseason so far.
Well, I love it. Well, I'll tell you this much. I'm ready for college football to kick off, so it's going to be a good time. Chancellor, I appreciate it. I'll let you hop on your flight. I know you're getting ready to hop on, and look forward to talking with you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, I love college football.
We see. I was just sitting there like, what are they talking about?
I like as a native Texan, it's probably illegal for me to not like or care about college football. But for Matt, I was just wondering, what is it about college football that you love so much?
So I think it's interesting you say that. Okay, so being from Ohio, we only have a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and try to explain it as quickly as I can. So you have Ohio, you have Cleveland, you have Cincinnati, where the Cleveland Browns, Cincinnati Bengals, both NFL teams, and quite frankly, the Indianapolis Colts and also Pittsburgh Steelers are all within 3 hours of where I grew up.
Okay.
Columbus did not have a pro football team. And at that time, when I was growing up, before the Columbus Blue Jackets, which is professional hockey, and the professional soccer team that showed up, there was no other team that people could rally around besides the Ohio State Buckeyes. So with that being said, naturally, I turned into a huge college football fan. And anybody who's watching from Michigan, we do not like you from Ohio. You guys know this, and you guys. Oh, speaking of the drama with that,
the
rivalry with that, I was watching some report out of Detroit, and it was talking about something that was based out of Ohio, and they ended their report with a "Thanks, Ohio. We appreciate you," or something. And I was like, I'm glad that that there is no love lost between both sides. So, but so there's all of that. I know that we're wrapping up, but I also want to say I know that we're also we have another story that Keyshawn is going to put up on YouTube later tonight.
Up in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be. So we don't have that much time. So he's going to put it up on YouTube tonight with Dietrich. So it's talking about what's happening in the Middle East and the big updates there. So make sure you go and check that out. Appreciate you all for joining us. We love seeing you guys here. Make sure you follow us and come and see us tomorrow.
Yeah, come see us tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after.
Exactly. Okay. Although I will not be on tomorrow night, so you two might be having to hold it down.
Oh Lord.
That's what we do.
Hold it down. All right, y'all. Have a good night, y'all.
All right, you too. Thank y'all. Bye.